We'll introduce a new social loans platform that is empowering a network of lending circle providers across the country. It's the notion of access to money, essentially. And there's the title, you can see it there. So we have Jose Quinonez, who's an Ashoka Fellow and Director of the Mission Asset Fund, and to his right, Janis Bowdler, who's the Managing Director, Senior Program Director for Global Philanthropy at JP Chase, and she will serve as the moderator here, and I'm going to turn it right over to Janis now. Thanks for being here.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I understand we're the first panel of the day, so I hope you all are properly caffeinated and ready for a good conversation. So I was really excited when I got the call to do this panel because the combination of financial education and technology is something that I'm very passionate about. I'm new to JP Chase Global Philanthropy, and my charge there is to stand up our strategy around financial capability, also community development, but that's a different panel that we'll talk about that later. When we think about the evolution of financial education, we're really on the cutting edge, bringing together a number of emerging trends, data, evidence from a variety of different fields. We're taking cues from behavioral science, from adult education, and of course, nothing in innovation is complete if you're not looking at what's going on in the tech world. Bringing all those disciplines to bear to think about how we move people out of the financial shadows and into the financial mainstream is critical. This is an imperative of our time, something that the JP Chase Foundation is deeply committed to. One of our partners, I'm very proud to say, is Mission Asset Fund. And for those of you who may have been watching Mission Asset Fund's trajectory, I'm very excited to tell you that today you're seeing the man behind the movement. He has a whole team too. We won't let him get too much of an ego, but it is really exciting to see, as I've watched Mission Asset Fund start from a community-based program in the Mission District and really launch into what I think is going to be a movement to help millions of families move into the financial mainstream, build their credit, and really change their lives. So I thought we'd start with just a little bit of a conversation, and then we'd love to include all of you as well. So Jose, why don't you start at the beginning? Tell us a little bit about how MAF got started and what you guys do there.
Thank you for that. And no, and I do not have a big ego. Trust me, my team always keeps it in check every day. So, the Mission Asset Fund, we are essentially a community-based organization. We got started 2007 in the Mission District to essentially help low-income immigrants in the Mission develop their financial capability. That was the charge, right? So, I got hired to actually, essentially kind of create that. The question for us was, well, how do you actually do that, with people that are essentially in the financial shadows, that have no checking accounts, no savings accounts? We read a report in 2008 where they found that about 44% of Mission households had no credit history, no credit score. Not even counting the people that had bad credit scores, right? And or there was about 53% of the adults, Latino adults in the Mission District had no checking account. So we basically asked a very simple question: how are you going to do that? How are you going to get people to build their financial capability where they're completely outside, they don't have access to the simplest of tools that they need to actually build their financial lives? And the simplest tools that you and I take for granted. There's like what I call the middle class, financial products and services that we take for granted. For low-income people, they don't have them. And so we thought that, in order to actually help build their, truly build that financial capability, and also we rejected the idea of what I just learned about. It's called, pamphlet parading. I love that term, by the way. That it's like, the world doesn't need another pamphlet. It doesn't need another, curriculum on financial education of how they need to budget this or that. People actually needed those tools to actually help them get into the financial mainstream. So we needed to tackle that. And then the way that we did that was to, one, recognize that actually, when you really think about it, immigrants are really financially savvy. The thing is, like, in the common notion of it, we don't necessarily give them a lot of credit for what it is that they do already, and we don't give them credit for how much they're actually already budgeting and saving for themselves and their family, but also for some family, in some other country, right? So, people know that really, they know about the interest rates, they know about interchange rates better than anybody, and so So we kind of said, it's like, you know what, we actually need to start by acknowledging what they do. We need to start by acknowledging their savviness and then building upon that, you know. And so that's how we started the process of looking at them differently, not as broken, not as in a deficit perspective. It's more like, wow, they're actually doing a lot for themselves already. So what can we add to that?
And we see this in my work at the foundation as fundamental to good service to low-mod communities. As you said, so many of the products out there have been designed for a different customer segment, and then we're sort of pushed on low, moderate income people, and then we're surprised when they don't want them because they're not working for them.
Exactly.
So another field that we draw on is design principle, where you actually build the product to serve that customer segment. You guys built social loans, and I think this is a great example of meeting families right where they were at. So tell us about the social loan, how it works, who uses it.
That's right. So I have actually a PowerPoint on that. So let me see if I can get it going. I'm not sure if it's going to work, actually.
Oh, yeah. I think you got it.
Okay. Oh. Give me a second here. Oh, can you? Can you get it to... There's a lot of titles. Okay, there we go. We started our program that we call Lending Circles, and to basically from the premise that of us recognizing what the people are already doing with their money. One of the things we knew that people actually do this all over the world, and the academic literature, they call them roscas, like rotating savings and credit associations. It's something that actually my family in Mexico actually they do a lot of, and in Mexico they call them tandas, condinas, and all throughout the Caribbean they call them Sousous, and I mean they come with all kinds of different names all over the world, but essentially it's exactly the same phenomena, which is a group of individuals that come together and they lend and borrow money with each other. And so, and in fact, that was actually the activity that they ignited the whole credit union movement in the late 1800s. It was a bunch of German farmers that got together and lent and borrowed money with each other. And that was the thing that ignited the credit union movement as we know it. But the thing is, like, that activity is still happening. People still do it. Now, for us, what we recognized it as differently was to say that, oh, actually, people are lending and making payments, right? And then I recognize that payment exactly the same as when we make a payment to a bank. It's exactly the same activity. But when we make those payments to the bank or to a credit card or whatever, that activity gets recorded and reported to the credit bureaus. But here's this other activity that they're making payments on time, and sometimes actually the first payment that they actually make, so it's always there because of the social pressure, the relationships they have with each other. But that payment activity was not being recorded nor reported to the credit bureau. So their good payment activity was just absent. It was just invisible. And so this is really where I drew from an idea that I learned from a professor from Peru. His name's Hernando de Soto, who talked about formalizing informal activity as a development strategy. And so I sort of kind of coupled those things together to say, wow, here's an idea, here's a strategy of how we can actually help people build their financial, history, financial capability by merely formalizing what they're already doing with their own money. And so the concept of sort of lifting up what they're doing, meeting them where they're at, providing in some value add, if you will, by us being the servicers of those loans, it just made perfect sense. So we rolled out that program in San Francisco. We essentially build a platform to make that servicing feasible and plausible for us. And now we're in a point of using technology to actually expand that product across the country with other nonprofit providers across the country.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. I mean, lending circles, by design, are communal. These are groups of people who work together, live together, they come together, and it's really built on trust. They sit across the table from one another, they look each other in the eye, and they've got very high accountability rates for that. I mean, your default rate is?
Close to zero.
Close to zero. I mean, we would love default rates, close to zero. But then when you think about, okay, how do you take something that is so intimate, really,
Yeah.
and so local,
Right.
and transplant that model all over the country. And I think we've actually seen some providers try to figure out how to do this on the internet. I'm not
Yeah.
sure that really works. You've got to have this
Yeah.
this local touch. But anybody, I'm new to the funder world. I can tell you, scale is like the holy grail. It's what we're all going for. We want to see good ideas
Yeah.
spread. So how do you take something that's so local and get it everywhere?
Yeah, I think you hit something on that spot there, the idea of the intimacy. That's really key, is that people have to sort of be in the same room, they have to see each other in the eye, and they have to agree and own those agreements with each other. Because when we form lending circles at our office, MAF, we're just sort of like the record keepers. We're just the ones that's like, well, if you want to do this, fine. And who's going to go first, who's going second? We just record that, and then we implement their decisions. But the decisions themselves are people's own decisions, so that ownership is key. The idea of social capital is really important. People are coming with their relationships intact, and so what we've tried to figure out is like, it's not an either or question. It's not an technology versus no technology, or like high touch versus low touch. What we're calling it is more like a high tech touch, because we still have to touch them in a real way, and so what we then build the sort of the platform to build the capacity of nonprofits to provide the service to their clients. So that nonprofit organization would have to sit down with them as well in offline, if you will, and have those conversations with them. But then they record all those decisions in our platform for us to then execute those decisions. So it's about a combination of using technology, using the platform to facilitate the servicing, while allowing nonprofits to do what they do best, which is meeting people, bringing them in the door, encouraging them, walking them through the process so that they can actually get this benefit. And so we then opted to essentially kind of focus on those nonprofits rather than us focusing on the end user, if you will. So because if we had to go to the end user ourselves directly, then that would have meant that none of that offline thing would have happened, because now we're dealing with a lot of people who knows where they may be, right? And so, but we needed to have that offline connectivity with them, and so that's how we built it.
And I know as you're thinking about this, and you're branching out to other communities, we're seeing that there are these all different types of organizations that are
Right.
natural places where people congregate. Can you give people just kind of a sense
Yeah.
of the kinds of and variety of partners that
No,
you've
that's
found?
right. Well, going back to the question of scale.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I want to answer it like this, because everybody's been asking us about scale since day one. I mean, we hadn't even formulated the concept fully, and people were saying, "How are you going to scale this thing?" But basically, what I've learned is this: is that before you scale, before you scale it, you have to have that it, right? And then that it has to be proven to work in various different settings. So you have to have that it in different settings so that you can demonstrate that it works with different circumstances. And then before you do that, you have to then sort of test it out. So you have to have a rigorous sort of analytical testing of that it. And before you do that, you have to sort of demonstrate that you have it. So sometimes we talk about scale and then we forget, well, what is the it that you want to scale? So in our case,
Can you prove that it works?
yeah, it'll prove that it works. But sometimes, again, people sort of go off and say, oh, I have a brochure that I want to scale. It's like, really? What does that mean? It's like, you want to print like 1,000 billion of those?
Brochures are very easy to scale.
Yeah, they are, exactly. You just print a lot of them. But in our case, we knew that, our it was this sort of lending the people already doing by themselves. So really, by definition, frankly, it's already at scale. It's just that we haven't recognized it. It's invisible to us. So we needed to sort of build the platform to recognize what's already happening out there, and then bring him into. So in my view, lending circles is already at scale, but it's just that we haven't seen it or recognized it just yet. Now, however, we still went through the demonstration project. We went through the analytical sort of evaluation project. And then we then tested the program with different communities. So with one was the gay and lesbian community in San Francisco, the Filipino Worker Center in LA. We actually working with a group called the Fremont Family Resource Center in Fremont that works primarily with very diverse clientele, but they work with Middle Eastern sort of community in Fremont. And in that sense, we sort of wanted to prove that this wasn't just a program that was going to work with the Latino community in the Mission District. I mean, I actually had a funder tell me, I was like, oh, Jose, that's only going to work with, the mission because you're so special. I was like, no, we might be special, but not that special. I mean, this actually is already working across the board. And then when we demonstrated it can work with the gay and lesbian community in San Francisco, we said, look, it's not an immigrant thing. It's about social connections and social relationships. It's about social capital, and we all have that. And so we essentially are sort of kind of capitalizing on that. So, and then so from that perspective, we said, okay, well, how do then we find other nonprofit organizations across the country that have that ability to connect, to bring together groups of people, and then we bring the capacity to have them build, and provide lending circles to their respective, clients.
Let me see how we're doing on time. I actually can't quite see this.
Can't see that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think I got time to ask you one more question, and then we'll come out to the audience. So the main theme for our conversation here, and a huge theme across this entire conference, is technology. So
Right.
in some way, I assume we're in a room full of believers who see that technology is critical to scale. But there's also a conversation out there that says, hey, technology is not reaching everybody, either because the digital divide is still real or because certain populations aren't taking up. There's an underserved population, there's an elderly population.
Yeah.
Certainly we know that not all of the kind of mobile services that are available in English are also available in Spanish or other languages. Certainly Asian languages have a tough time. So I'd say we have to recognize that there's a skeptic out there that says technology might not be the best way to get services to communities that we care about. But you're in the thick. You're using technology. Yeah. So how do you reconcile that, and how are you seeing it kind of play out? How are you leveraging it to the best for the community?
I guess I don't dwell too much in that theoretical debate because nowadays technology is like breathing oxygen. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
It's like everything's about technology, and it's going to get even more so. So I don't, my notion is technology is a tool. It's sort of like, when monkeys, when they get a branch just to stick it into some hole and get ants and eat them, it's a tool. That's really what it is. And so we're just using the tools that are available to our, to our disposal, and then using them to provide a benefit to low-income people. And I think that's really the question is that, kind of like when we were talking about earlier, that there's a lot of financial products and services that are built and created not for low-income people. They're created for middle-class Americans. They're created for high wealth individuals because we have a sense that they're the ones with the money, right? But nothing's being created for the benefit of low-income people. So I think that's really the difference in our perspective is to say, we build a platform where people are going to be able to sign promissory notes and program agreements using their cell phone. They're going to take out their cell phone and sign a program agreement on their cell phone. And of course that's technology that we did not create. Some other company already created DocuSign. We're using them, and Salesforce, we're using their platform. The technology is already out there. We're just sort of channeling and marshaling that technology for the benefit of low-income individuals. And I think that's the difference. Yeah.
Great. Well, I have plenty of other questions for Jose, but let's mix it up a bit here.
Good. We got a first question here.
I'm curious about the future. How do you see yourself in terms of products? Are you going to be expanding your product portfolio? Because you're now talking about loans or microloans. And if you expand the product portfolio, you may end up in becoming almost like a financial institution. So regulation would be a challenge in terms of how do you manage that.
And can you quickly tell us your name and where you're from?
My name is Enrique Goizueta. I'm from Spain. And I represent a company called MediaNet Software, and we actually work quite heavily with banks, so I'm very interested.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. Thank you for asking that. I get asked that question a lot in terms of, what is our regulatory sort of space? And then here in this country, I guess, my premise is this, is that, the world, just like we don't need another pamphlet, we don't need another bank, we don't need another credit union. Because I think there's a lot of banks that are already out there. What we need is organizations that are building the better consumers, better borrowers, so that they can be empowered borrowers in the financial marketplace. That's our sort of notion. And then we found a very interesting space, where our loans, because our loans are zero interest, zero fees, the regulatory structures, they don't understand that. They're like, what do you mean these are zero interest loans? How does that make any sense? And it doesn't make any sense for them. It makes sense for us, because what we're doing essentially are servicing those loans and reporting to the credit bureaus. Because the value of our program, to our clients is not just the loans itself. It's not just the money that they're getting, but the real value is in our ability of helping them build or improve their credit score. Because in this country, not having a credit score means that you have no access to get loans, you have no access to get apartments, you have no access to buy cars, you have no
apply for jobs.
Apply for jobs. I mean, so that credit history, credit report is like, it's huge. It's like the glue that builds, this whole economy, right? So that's the real purpose for our work. So we don't intend to become a bank nor a credit union or things like that. We just want to build or build a better pool of eligible borrowers or empower borrowers so that when they go into the financial marketplace, they understand the opportunities in the marketplace, and they also understand the traps in the marketplace so that they can better themselves. So I think that's really where we're going to live as an organization for some time.
Good. We got a second question here.
Good morning. Thank you, Jose. This is quite interesting. My name is Jorge Rubio. I'm with Citi. I think the social value of the proposition is quite clear, but in terms of the business model, how do you make money to actually make this scalable?
Yeah.
If you could expand a little bit on that.
Yep. Thank you for that. That's a good question. I always get that question a lot too. You guys are right on cue. So as a nonprofit organization, we do operate under market, constraints, right? But the market constraints in the way that I see it is that as a nonprofit organization in the business of providing a social benefit, to our clients, we're giving a very special tax status, which is a nonprofit organization, right? And then the people that buy our services, again, in the market situation, are actually foundations. And there's a lot of family foundations, a lot of corporations, including Citibank and Chase, who buy that service because they get a special tax break, benefit from buying that particular service. And so in our sense, we've been profitable, if you will, for the past 6 years, because every year we have a surplus. But we're sort of essentially are selling a program to provide a social good, right? Now the people that benefit from that are our clients, right? So in a sense, in the market, in the way that I look at it, is like the people that are paying us are those foundations, and they're there to do that, and we're providing them with clear indications or evaluations that we actually are moving the needle in people's lives, that we actually are materially changing people's lives, and that is what foundations are want to support, because there's a lot of programs out there that are not doing that, right? And so there are very few programs that actually can demonstrate and articulate how we move this one person from a bad situation to a better situation. And I think that's essentially the market that we operate.
I think the other thing that's important about your question is that we've been thinking, and I know Citi's a strong partner on this with Brandy McHale's work at the foundation, thinking about nonprofits as delivery mechanisms for financial services, and essentially how our strategic philanthropic dollars can create an ecosystem of providers who are, instead of calling them unbanked, they're pre-banked. They need something different than what we have to offer, and that's okay. I would never advocate that JP Morgan try to replicate what Jose is doing, and I probably would get laughed out of my job if I tried, for a whole host of reasons. He's perfectly situated to be doing what he's doing. A lot of those people, you should mention some of the impact that you've had after they've participated in the lending circles and they build a positive credit history. As you were saying, they go into the marketplace, and now these are people who are better prepared to engage with the kinds of products and services that we offer that have a stronger underwriting criteria, necessarily so. So I see strategic philanthropy as a way that we're able to reach a customer that we wouldn't be able to serve through our regular lines of business. And so in that way, that's a business model for us as well, helping to create this ecosystem of mission-driven providers.
That's exactly right. And another way to describe it as well is that the value that we're creating as an organization as being having better borrowers the value is actually being had by the financial institutions themselves. So our clients go to your bank to get loans, to buy cars, or they go to your bank to get mortgages, or to your organization to get loans, and the value is what you guys are reaping. Now, we kind of go to you guys and say, hey, you guys have to also cover the cost of that, because we're not keeping them within our own ranks, for example. Because if I was an actual lender, a direct lender, I wouldn't want my customer to go to your bank, because I spend a lot of time and effort in building their capacity. So in a sense, we sort of look at ourselves as a piece within this ecosystem to say, well, somebody has to do this work, which is hard work. And then we're doing it quite well, so let's support that. And then the people that benefit is actually the whole financial institution, I mean, the system as a whole. And so I think that's really the business proposition. There is not just math within ourselves independent, but we really are looking at ourselves, in the broader context. So we're doing something that, other banks cannot do.
And what's the average credit score increase?
Yes, I'm sorry. So, the evaluation that we did, we found is that within 10 or 12 months, people's credit scores actually increased by an average of 168 points. 30% of our clients start with 0, and within 10 months, they go from 0 to 600. The clients that start lending circles, they with a credit score, they increase an average of about 20 points. They also decrease their level of high debts, an average of a little bit over $1,000, in the course of 10 months. And within the time period, also they increase the number of trade lines by 3. So they actually are getting our loan, but they're also going to the banks and whatnot, or credit cards, and getting additional trade lines. And so we've been able to sort of document that, because we get the credit reports, and then we actually can see the progress that they're making in time. So it's been a very impactful intervention to help them get into the financial mainstream and understand the opportunities and the traps they're in.
And the average length of the loan and the average amount of the loan?
Yeah, so the average at this point is about $1,000 to $1,200. People sort of contribute. The way the lending circles work is like if you have 10 people, each contributing $100, now you have $1,000, and then somebody takes $1,000 on a monthly basis, and they do that in rotation until everybody gets $1,000. And so then the actual number is something that the group themselves determine. So they say, so some groups might do $50, other groups may do $75. Some groups actually do $200, and so, but it's their decision, and then we just essentially service it for them.
And the duration of the loan is usually
10 to 12 months. Which is really interesting too, is that one of the key factors in that is that people need sort of fast liquidity to their cash, right? And so, they need it within the year, so that the time frame, the time horizon for low-income individuals is really within the year. Now we're saving money that we're not going to see for the next 30 years. Me, 25 years. 30 years for you? I think maybe 24 years now. I'm counting, so maybe my retirement. But for us, we can do that. We put money away, and so our time horizons are a little bit longer. But for folks that are, again, in the crunch, people that are stuck, people that are invisible, people that are strapped in the financial, in the financial shadows, they need quick liquidity. So that's really important. So we try to keep the lending circles within the year time frame.
male versus female?
So about 65% of our clients at MAF are female. And then the rest are either the husbands or the brothers or the co-workers of those females. So I mean, it is really fascinating that. I mean, it's just, to think that they really are the drivers of the financial decision making in their households, and they're the ones that are coming to our program for help.
And do you have a story that maybe has touched you at some point on this journey, where you've seen the impact of a real person and how it hacked them, and you've got 24 seconds to tell that story?
24 seconds.
Tell them Helen's story.
Yes, Helen's story.
My favorite.
If you remember anything, please remember about Helen. Helen lived in Chicago, moved to San Francisco after experiencing domestic violence in her life. She moved to San Francisco with her 2 kids, had no credit score, no credit history, no job, was essentially homeless, living in the hallways in very crowded apartments. And all she wanted to do is have her own apartment, safe apartment, so that she and her kids can rebuild their own lives. But without the credit score or the credit history, they couldn't get that. They participated in a program. Within 10 months, they got their credit report. She used her lending circle as a deposit to a new apartment. She came to us. ecstatic, happy as can be. She started to cry, we started to cry, because she got what she wanted. It was like in just a safe housing environment. Now, she's still poor, she's still working minimum wage jobs, she's still struggling, but she's happy because now she's free, she's liberated from that situation. And we were able to help her just by merely helping her build a credit score.
Can I ask?
20 seconds?
Great. That was a wonderful story, a wonderful presentation. I'm sure if you have additional questions afterwards, you could talk to them in the hall. We'll give a round of applause. Before we do,